Hello and welcome to another episode of Hope to Recap, where we bring you up to speed on our latest D&D episode for our current D&D campaign, Ravenwood. Today, it's going to be a little bit of a long one because we are recapping episode 12, Consequences. Just keep in mind, this was a 10-hour stream that we did just to celebrate the fact that most of our players were on spring break, so they were able to do something like this. Anyways, let's not waste any more time and just jump right into it. This episode begins in the middle of the night after most have already gone to bed. Being woken up by some footsteps, both Alva and Roland are greeted by Officer Locke, every single one of the council members, and a group of unfamiliar guards dressed in full metal plated armor. Locke tells Alva they are here for him and would like to take him back to the land of Fenris Woods to be trialed for an act he committed against their people not too long ago. Alva thinks back and remembers that around the second week of school, he accidentally teleported himself and Sterling to an unknown kingdom. Sterling was encased in a block of ice for attempting to fight an ancient white dragon by the name of Alder. Alva sought after Alder after he disrespected the ancient dragon, therefore severing ties between Alder and his friends. Alva, feeling guilty for ruining what could have been a powerful connection, takes Sterling with him to Alder's lair, trying to make amends. This is where Alder tells Alva that if he does something for him, he would consider preserving his relationship with his friends once more. After Sterling gets ignored by Alder, he proceeds to launch at the dragon with an attack but gets bested, Alder shortly after encasing him in a block of ice. After the conversation is over, unknowing how to get home without Sterling's teleportation, Alva attempts to draw the teleportation circle that leads to a rug inside the team's home, but messes up and gets teleported to an unknown location. Frantically trying to escape where they are, Alva gets caught by a few guards and gets dragged to a cell chamber. This is where Alva embraces his negative emotions and unleashes a deadly blow on an array of guards fully consumed by the darkness. Dragging Sterling back to the circle they teleported in from, the duo makes their way back to Ravenwood unknowing of what just happened. This leads us to present day, where Alva's mistakes come back to haunt him.
Everyone from the High Council steps up.
Including Toto?
Including Toto, yeah.
So you're like, dude, like, really?
Adrian kind of like crouches next to you. He's like, look, buddy. The school has a lot of rules, man.
Look, I did what I did, and
No, I get it, but the school has a lot of rules, and until you get this taken care of, unfortunately, we are gonna have to temporarily expel you.
I accept that.
Alva agrees to go with the guards in order to see his trial through and gets accompanied by his team, Toto and Officer Locke. After almost a week's worth of travel, the traveling party makes a sudden stop just hours from their destination. All of a sudden, one by one, the guards traveling with them begin getting taken down faster than the group can keep up with. Roland, using his new acquired B-Sense, alerts the group he sees trails of humanoid beings facing at incredible speeds. Not wasting time, Filippo goes into his very own super speed mode and manages to see the enemy at hand, engaging with one of them, making it out with just one scratch, or so he thought. Filippo manages to get the group together by the carriage Alva was getting transported in, but not before, in a blink of an eye, the door to the carriage gets ripped open. Soon after, Alva, unable to do anything, gets dragged out of the carriage by these beings, disappearing into the trees. The group, now in a panic, do their best to spot Alva. Thanks to Kira, Shen's owl, the group gets informed that Alva has been transported by these fiends to another carriage. Alva, now in the other carriage, gets greeted by a lady, Queen Greycod. She begins to thank Alva for the stunt he pulled earlier. The pointless bloodshed that Alva was responsible for gave the Queen's kingdom the upper hand against their enemies by kidnapping their princess, therefore weakening the whole army, who pertain to House Fenris, the location where Alva and his team were headed to for the trial. Alva, distrusting of the Queen, tells her he didn't want to be rescued, but the Queen assured him that if he were to attend said trial, he'd actually be facing death. The group, still in pursuit for Alva, catch up to the carriage. Alva calls his team off, and in a sudden stop, they all meet Queen Greycod, who invites them all to dinner inside her kingdom. Not feeling like they have much of a choice, Alva and his friends, with the absence of Officer Locke who gets left behind, make their way to her estate. Upon arrival, they all get led to their room since the Queen wishes them to stay for the night. Everyone but Alva gets room next to each other, which everyone finds odd. Once in this room, Alva begins to meditate again, hoping it would calm his emotions down. Everyone gets called down to dinner, and the group meets Emily, the queen's daughter. The queen tells the group that she wishes to have Alva's signature power, the dark infused power he used to kill the innocent guards of the neighboring kingdom. She tells him how much she has searched for a power similar to his and would like him and his daughter to marry in order for Emily to bear a child that would have his power as well as their family's royal blood. With the whole table in shock, Alva begins to freak out while Emily not saying a word.
I'd like for you to marry my daughter and give me a grandchild.
Oh no! I knew it. What did I say to you earlier?
I started eating lettuce.
I'm like,
how'd you get the girl before me?
The girl just stops tapping her fingers. It's very simple.
How the freak would I react?
Hands are off.
What do you want though? No.
oh my gosh.
So you provide.
These are their
You
something to do.
possess such
Do it.
such premium genes, such unique talent that I'd like for that to be passed down onto my family.
The queen tells the group that the only way the group can leave is if Alva agrees and gives them a month to figure it out. She claims that having a child that possesses both types of blood can help her kingdom finally defeat House Fenris, who have done nothing but torment her people. Alva requests to get to know Emily first and begins to think about the possibility of setting his team free from his consequences that his actions caused. Later that night in Alva's room, Emily and him spend time together, Alva asking her questions about her family and herself. Alva insists that if they were to go ahead and have a child, he deserved to know everything about her, especially what she was, since everyone, especially Pearl, was convinced that she was a vampire. Emily charms Alva into seeing her fangs and tells him she's from a land of vampires and is currently over 200 years old. She also tells him how much she hates her mom and that the reason she's giving them a month is because of the blue moon, which is the only time that a vampire can conceive. She also tells him that her dad died after her birth and that she was kept locked up by her mom for 150 years. Alva tells her that there might be a different way to do things, but Emily is convinced that there wasn't and would do anything if it meant for her people to be safe. Alva strikes a deal with Emily that if they help her kingdom prepare for the war and fight alongside them, she would see it that they would discuss another method of handling the situation. Emily tells Alva that there's a place called the Silver Mines, infested with House Fenris soldiers, who Emily now informs Alva of being werewolves. That same night, Toto does his own investigation in the castle's library, discovering that both Emily's birth certificate and her dad's death certificate were tampered with and adjusted, leaving Toto with his own suspicions. At night, Alva has a dream of what appears to be him holding a baby, looking back to see a woman with brown hair smiling back at him. As he awakes, he sees his bedroom window covered in ice. He makes his way to it and just barely makes out a ghostly figure making its way to a collapsed tower of some sort in the distance. As morning arrives, Alva makes his way to Ania's room and tells her everything Emily and him discuss, telling her that he might stay back in order for them to leave. Ania tells him that they'll support him in his decision and that no matter what, they were family in the end. Feeling guilty about marrying someone else, knowing the feelings he has for her, Alva tells Ania that he likes her, but proceeds to leave the room to tell the rest of the team what he had learned from Emily. Ania, now feeling awkward for not being able to speak her mind, just kind of brushes it off, for the time being at least. As the group gathers in Filippo's room, Toto tells the group about what he found out about Emily's birth certificate and her dad's death certificate, suspecting foul play. Alva talks to the group about the mission he agreed to do with Emily and also shares the discussion they had the night before. With the stakes high, the group departs and makes their way to the Silver Mines. On the way there, Alva asks the group to make a quick stop at the destroyed tower, feeling as though there could be answers to Emily's past there. After a few minutes of investigation, the group comes across across some rubble marked with some symbols. Shen, after analyzing the pieces, ascertains that it's part of a teleportation circle. The group begins to put the pieces of rubble back together as if solving a puzzle, and at the end of it they discover that it contains two symbols, one being part werewolf while the other part vampire. Then and there, Alva has a realization and thinks back at the dream he had. He realized that it wasn't him who was carrying the baby, but rather he was simply looking through Emily's dad's eyes, and he was carrying Emily, while the woman wasn't the queen, but rather Emily's real mom. Alva tells Emily what he suspects, and shortly after, the group finds a piece of a sheet, bloodied and old. Roland uses his beast sense again to smell the blood on it and realizes that it's werewolf blood. As he continues to sniff, he begins to sense the same smell coming from Emily. Then the group finds another piece of another similar blanket, but this one just a bit different from the last. After another quick realization, Alva comes to the final conclusion of his dream. The first sheet was the one that Emily was covered in, the same sheet that she was covered in while her dad was holding her, which could only mean that Emily has a sister, the other princess who was being locked away by the queen. In a rush and still confused on what is happening, the group decides to ditch the Silver Mine's mission and rushes back to the kingdom, all while Roland's still picking up the same smell. Once inside, they follow the scent to a room. After a few minutes of puzzle solving, the group discovers a hidden entrance in that room. Following it down, they hear something being teared apart and the crunching of bones. Toto manages to take a quick peek around the corner and sees Queen Greycod feeding away on something. Emily, in a rage, attempts to rush inside but is stopped by Alva, who tells her that he promised her that he'd help her. But she has to play it smart and asks her to be patient so the group could all attack together, therefore increasing their chances of winning. The group takes a second to prepare and goes in for a group attack. Now in battle, the group realizes that it was the princess the queen was feeding on. This enrages the group, but especially Emily and Alva. In a hard fight, the queen manages to animate the corpses of the fallen princess, who turns into her werewolf shape. Shen also falls victim to the queen and becomes reanimated by her too. Now having the odds stacked against them, Alva's darkness begins to build up, taking over his good symbiote suit. In a full-blown punch, Alva falls into darkness once again, but does an incredible amount of damage to the queen. Gearing up for another deadly strike, he hears a void in his head, and it says, "This fight could be over with just one more of those punches. You can save your friends." Not able to suppress his anger and rage any longer, Alva goes to strike the queen one more time, but then he feels a hand on his shoulder. The hand of Emily, who looks at Alva and reminds him of the words that he told her, "There's always another way."
You pull back your fist ready to end the fight again, as the queen is looking rather terrified.
Dude. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you have no choice, man.
I don't know. It doesn't.
And then you feel an arm on your hand.
Dude.
You turn and you see Emily looking at you. But you repeat back to your same words. There's always another way.
Do it.
Waifu.
Can I get the other one?
No.
And your wife starts to fade from.
You're like, no, Alva, on your face.
Please.
What did you say?
Hey,
I will
go
give you
for
two
it.
choices.
Okay.
Continue attacking, but
What?
finish off with your right
No, we
hand,
shouldn't.
Go, bro.
or finish your turn.
What did you say?
Go, bro.
It's our common comedy now.
I finished my turn first.
This calms Alva down completely. He takes a step back and takes a breather, and the battle continues. After a few more exchanges, the queen finally goes down, releasing control of both Shen and the other princess. Shen quickly runs to the princess and casts Revivify on her, hoping for the best. In an instant, a dark flash dashes past the group, the essence of the queen, who's making her way to her tomb to come back again. Alva tells Emily he would go with her, and with the use of Emily's vampire speed, both of them phase after the queen. Just barely getting there, Alva tells Emily to throw him at the queen. Emily wastes no time. With a move that is reminiscent of Filippo and Alva's Eat My Shell combo, Emily shoots Alva at the queen. Alva, now focusing on the good and suppressing the dark, uses his signature to blast her tomb and the queen into oblivion, hoping to never see her again. but with great power comes great repercussions. And due to the amount of force and energy Alva put behind his fist, he now lays there, dying. Oh, I almost forgot. Remember that slash Filippo suffered? Yeah, that caused him to get vampire disease. And he was freaking out the whole time, since he could have died again. Also, Toto had it too. Don't worry. Luckily, the saliva of the werewolf queen, who we do not know the name of yet, saved Filippo. As for Toto, though, this happened.
Are you sure you want to drop the vampire disease?
You thinking about it? It's really.
Let me tell you right now, your next roll, if you roll a crit, you're a full vampire.
Okay.
If you roll a crit fail, you die.
What if I roll anything
If
between?
you roll a 10 or above, you have another success. 9 or below is another fail.
You haven't rolled a crit this session. So
Toto Lamborghini.
Are you about the risks or not?
I'm not saying that.
You about that bet game, yo. Shoot.
I go for it.
You go.
There you go.
Roll-
Take a
roll me a
chance.
D20.
Take a chance. Hope to dice.
That's where I die, guys. That's a 20! Oh my god!
And
No!
as the wolf starts walking over towards you, you're like, let me endure this.
It's like, alright,
And you just sit there waiting for it as you start to feel this disease start to take over your body.
Oh my
It
god.
wraps around your heart and you feel your heart get constrained and stop. You feel suffocated, like you can't breathe, like you can't do anything. And eventually you just see Toto, his eyes roll to the back of his head and falls flat on his back.
Yeah. He's a vampire now. Anyways, thank you very much for joining us for another recap. I really hope you enjoyed. Again, I'm sorry this recap was super long just because we had a 10-hour stream. But anyways, hopefully you enjoyed. If you missed the episode, it'll be linked in the description. If you want to catch us live for this exact campaign, feel free to do so. We're live every single Wednesday at 5 p.m. CST at twitch.tv/HopeToDice. Thank you very much for watching. We're Hope to Dice, and we hope to see you again next time.